All right, Illini fans, let's talk about our favorite person, Brad Underwood.
You are Locked On Illini, your daily podcast on the Illinois Fighting Illini. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome all to a short, abbreviated version of Locked On Illini. Thank you all so much for making us your first listen each and every day. And thank you so much for making the Locked On Sports Network the #1 sports network in the entire world. Today, I wanted to come on. I know I've already released a Wednesday episode, and that was a live post game from that Ohio State game, but I just got done rewatching that Ohio State Buckeyes game from Tuesday evening, and I've already finished tomorrow's episode. You're going to see the player grades, and you're going to see me talk about Keaton Wagler and whether he's a one and done. So if that's something you're interested in, I think you're really going to like tomorrow's episode. But I've had some extra thoughts in my head upon this rewatch that I just had to formulate into a separate episode. Now, I do this for my everydayers. The link should be in the description if you're interested in. I have a limited amount of time with Locked On how much content I can produce. And so I release what's called like an all access episode. And this is kind of a glimpse of that. So if this is something you're interested in, please reach out to me or find the link in the description. I do this multiple times a week. And that's today's topic is I simply kind of just want to talk about Brad Underwood for a second. And admittedly, I feel compelled to do this because of what I sat here in front of you, in front of a camera, saying after that UConn game. I vented a lot of frustrations after that, I believe it was a 13-point loss to UConn in Madison Square Garden. And I talked about my frustrations with Brad and how, while on one hand, I'm appreciative of where he's gotten us to as a program, that I do at times feel vulnerable and frustrated at the ceilings that I see, the limitations that come with being Brad Underwood. And 2 games have passed since then. And because I sat there for 40 minutes talking about my frustrations, if I'm going to be an unbiased source for you guys, someone who calls out the bad when I see it, you need to be able to trust me when I call out the good when I see it. And upon that rewatch of that Ohio State game, and I had the same exact feeling after the Tennessee game, there was a lot of good. And a lot of the good was not just the players, it was decisions that the coaching staff made. I don't need to rehash the post-game live. I'm sure a lot of you guys saw this Ohio State game. Bruce Thornton goes off for 24 points in the first half. He scores 9 of his first shots winning. 9 for 9. I think he finished 9 for 10 in that first half alone. And then at halftime, obviously an adjustment needs to be made. And what Brad does is he brings in Andrej Stojakovic. He switches them up, and now Andrej Stojakovic is going to guard Thornton in the second half. And for the most part, he bottled them up. I know Bruce Thornton got some garbage points at the end of the game, still ended up with 34 for the entire game. But truth be told, I think I only counted one time when Bruce Thornton scored when Andrej Stojakovic was guarding him in the second half. And this comes from following up from the Tennessee game, where once again, I think Illinois outscored Tennessee by 15 or 16 points just in the second half alone, all through adjustments and scouting that the coaching staff did on their opponents, which, again, I know some of you are going to say, oh, congratulations, Brad Underwood, for doing your job. And you're missing the point of this, okay? This episode is just as much for the Brad supporters as it is for the Brad haters, right? I can respect an opinion of being a Brad hater, and it's like 30% of the people who, at least I come across. Take a look at the comment section of every video I produce. 1 out of X amount will always be Brad Underwood this, Brad Underwood that, in a not so positive way. But I will take your opinion more seriously if you promise me that you judge based on what you're seeing and not just what we've seen in the past, because that's what I do. But I'm also willing to be open and adjusting to see what is happening in the current form. And current for Brad Underwood is looking like he's a really good coach. And I say that. Illinois right now, they're 8-2, I believe. KPI ranking is 17. Their Ken Pom is number 9. Bart Torvik, number 10. Essentially, Illinois is playing as a top 10 team. They've lost 2 games, but 2 games which I think most people, if they looked at the schedule beforehand, before the season started, most people would probably have Illinois at 2 losses right now, right? You lost a coin flip game to Alabama at the United Center without Tomislav Ivisic looking anything like what Tomislav Ivisic should look like. And then you lost a game to UConn. UConn just steamrolled Florida. You played in UConn's second home stadium in the Madison Square Garden. They call it Store South for a reason. UConn, by the end of the year is going to be a Final Four candidate, maybe a national championship contender. So you don't have any bad losses. But Brad Underwood, all offseason long, and it's not just this offseason, he's been preaching 2 things, and that's defense and rebounding. And even when this team has these fantastic offensive outbursts that they've been having, the number one focus on all his press conferences, and again, I don't see these because I go live immediately after the game for my post-game lives, so I watch it after I'm done recording here. But almost every single time, whether he's talking about a player or whether he's talking about the team, he focuses first and foremost on rebounding, and he focuses on defense. And in particular, with guys like Andrej Stojakovic or Kylan Boswell. Even in the offseason, he talked about how much of the defensive side he needed. And now, when Brad Underwood first came to Illinois, we had a very aggressive style of defense. But I think it's fair to say, to even the biggest Brad Underwood supporter, that the defense has far lagged behind the offense over the last couple of seasons at the very least. And it was nice to see that Brad noticed it. We just didn't think he was actually going to do anything about it. But he did. He did make a defensive shift when it comes to the staff. They hired Cameron Crocker. And I think just the mentality of what he's been harping on in that locker room is all about the rebounding and the defense. Very rarely do we hear anything about offense. And I know this because even it's not just Brad. I listened to David Mirkovic in the post-game show. He got interviewed by the media after the game yesterday, and he said the same thing, that basically Brad was harping on us about rebounding, about he got to them the way he does. I think that was the phrase that he said. Well, you see the results of it. I mean, I don't know how you guys judge this team right now. The season is still very young. I think this team is potentially a national championship contender. I think they might be one player away, unfortunately, but we'll see. Obviously, I don't think anyone can dispute that this team has a very incredibly talented roster. And that's, again, credit to Brad, right? A lot of the guys from yesteryears, he would focus on the top rankings, getting the highest recruits numbers. Again, not that he necessarily was looking at the recruiting rankings, but you saw that Illinois would routinely be in the top 10, top 15, top 20 when it comes to the recruiting classes every single year. And then this past offseason, Brad went towards certain players. We mentioned Josh Dix, amongst others, in the transfer portal. But then he also realized that based on the resources that he has at Illinois, that maybe he can get better value looking elsewhere, where the majority of other coaches aren't necessarily looking. And he landed what might be maybe the best freshman in the Big Ten Conference. And of course, I'm talking about David Mirkovic. David was a player that nobody had on their radar. He was Dame Sarr's teammate at one point, and that's most people were focused on Dame Sarr coming to the Illini. But he brought in David. And then, of course, Keaton Wagler was another guy who, what else can I say about Keaton Wagler that you guys have not heard already? A guy who's had only 2 Power 4 offers, Minnesota and Illinois. This was a Tyler Underwood pickup. Tyler convinced his dad to take a look. They obviously liked his skill set and thought it would fit really well with what Illinois is trying to run. And now we see that they were absolutely right. They hit an absolute home run with this roster. But that brings me to my next point. For all the things that Brad is really, really good at, one of my other frustrations, and I think this was one of the reasons last year's team failed, was that Brad sometimes takes a while to get to playing his best lineup. That not necessarily the 5 best players are always playing when it comes to Brad. And it drives a lot of us crazy. But this year, the last few games, your starters have been Kylan Boswell, Keaton Wagler, Andrej Stojakovic, David Mirkovic, and Tomislav Ivisic. Brad is now playing your best 5 players in your starting lineup, and they're all playing 25, 30 plus minutes. Again, there's no player that you look at the minutes per game like, oh, that's way too much or that's way too little. If you take a look at the minutes per game, I think they're all slotted pretty much kind of where they should. Now, I know some of you are going to come in here and complain about Ben Hummerkaus. You're on your own on that one. I don't think Ben has nearly as big of a role as he had last year. I think he's playing the exact amount of minutes that he should be, right around 15 to 20 minutes every day for what he does. Obviously, last year, Ben Hummerkaus was a classic example here. Last year, Brad would play Ben 25, 30 plus minutes, regardless of whether he was performing or not. Last year, he really wasn't. He wasn't hitting the threes, and he wasn't giving you the X factor positives that he's giving you this year. But this year, things are just different. Brad has built a roster to his liking, the way he wants to, and he knows the offensive talent is there, but he's focusing more so on the defensive side and making sure everybody in that locker room knows they need to rebound that basketball. And he's placed each player in a role where they can thrive in all offseason long. Brad and Kyle Basel was telling us that Keaton Wagler is a star. And Brad was very upfront and honest in the sense where he was saying, yeah, I think he's clearly in the class of Will Riley and Kasper Siakis. And again, I came on here on this show and I said I hated that Brad did that because I know Brad probably really likes what he saw from Keaton in the offseason workouts, but there's no way that Keaton can live up to these expectations. There's no way the 150th ranked recruit, in some rankings he was over 200. There's no way that guy could compare to two of the best freshmen that Illinois has had in, 25, 30 years? One problem. Yes, Keaton arguably is better than Kasperas from last year. Arguably better than Will Riley from last year. Brad Underwood, it turns out, was telling us the truth. He was honest about it. And I feel like in yesteryears, a player like David or a player like Keaton, freshman, wouldn't have gotten 30 plus minutes a game. Guys, Keaton Wagler played 39 minutes against Ohio State. Why? Because there were 39 really good minutes. There's head coaches out there who don't give freshmen time on the court. And you know what? Brad Underwood used to be one of those guys that he would rely on his veterans. All offseason, this was supposed to be the retention year. This was supposed to be the year that, we're bringing half the roster back. And by Illinois standards, half is pretty good. That this was going to be a team that relies more on its veterans, Kylan, Tomislav, bringing in the guy like Andrei Stojakovic for his experience. But it turns out maybe your two best players are freshmen. And Brad's not running from that. He's not trying to alleviate pressure off of these guys. In fact, almost the opposite. In the post-game press conference, Brad said, I'm not putting a ceiling to Keaton Wagler because he doesn't know what it is. He's letting these freshmen play basketball and grow in front of all of our eyes. He's not putting any sort of limitations. He's not putting any sort of ceilings. And again, after rewatching this game, I just thought, Brad has changed. We call out when players make an adjustment and, they grow into being better players as years progress. And usually you don't necessarily see that from head coaches. Now, I won't necessarily say that for Brad. One of the things I absolutely adore about Underwood is his adaptability. Each offseason, he has no problem. He's not a stubborn guy. If he feels like he has to shift his strategy, whether it's recruiting or game style or gameplay, something, he's willing to do it. He's not stubborn like some of the other older coaches. But this year, a lot of the frustrations I've had in years prior, and to be fair, I had 2 weeks ago in that UConn game, when I look at the overall big picture, I almost wonder if, just like players tend to take a leap at some point in their career, that maybe Brad is about to make his own leap. Maybe he's about to enter that tier of very good coaches to elite coaches. I think right now he's on a very solid, the B line, right? If I had to give him a grade as a head coach. He's learning. He's clearly learning every single day. not only, of course, is it his job, but seeing these improvements and seeing that he's willing to make some adjustments, to me, has me just as excited as the two freshmen that are leading this Illini basketball team right now. And I just felt compelled enough to want to say it. And I get your guys' thoughts, especially this is just a short episode. Again, all access episode. If this is something you're interested in, I want to do this multiple times a week. Look into the Everydayers clubs. Let me get to some of your guys' thoughts. TM says, leap. Nope. Brad will take one step forward, but then take two steps backwards. There's no consistency. And I get it. I understand why you're saying that because you're relying on history. All I'm saying is you also have to at some point live in the moment. And so if you're going to always look on the negative side, come with a clean slate. And then if you still lean negative, then I can respect your opinion. But if you've already made your decision beforehand, then really it's not a productive conversation at all. Joe, thanks for stopping by, says, why is Brandon Lee not playing? Does anyone know? Do not hear anything about him. Joe, I don't think he's just quite ready. I don't think Brandon was planned to be a part of the rotation this year. At least that was my impression. Keaton was. I don't know to this extent. I don't know if Keaton was supposed to be the best player on the basketball team, but everything I had heard, even coming into the season, was this was going to be more of a learning year for Brandon. He's going to be a practice guy, learning from a guy like Colin Boswell, who might be the perfect person for a player with his skill set to learn from. And that next year, Brandon becomes a part of the rotation. And, I can't wait. Like, we know he's going to be a defensive, aggressive type of basketball player. His offense has been a very pleasant surprise so far this season. But I'm not honestly too shocked that Brandon hasn't seen much of the court. I think that was kind of the plan all along. Maybe you're going to see him more in like blowouts and whatnot. But right now, it's the same reason Mihailo Petrovic is not playing, right? It's hard to sit Keaton Wagler and Colin Boswell right now, the way that they're playing. All right, guys, I'm going to wrap it up. Again, I just want to jump on here real quick, give you a quick episode, something I want to do more often than not. If this is something you're interested in, let me know in the comment section. Until next time, ILL. Love you guys.